I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, our first Tuesday edition of the season, but that means we are here to mourn with those of you that drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round of your Superflex draft. So for all those people who aren't Jets fans, how was the rest of the weekend?
Man, my weekend was great. The Lions win on Thursday. The Bradley Jaguars blew out Marysville High School on Friday. Ohio State won on Saturday. The Browns won on Sunday. You know, aside from my fantasy teams going 12-11, my weekend was fantastic. How about you, Matt?
Same. It was a good weekend. It was nice to see the Browns beat up on the Cincy Kitties. That was a fun game. Got to get my first coaching game in, which was a lot of fun, even though we lost. So it was a good weekend. I'm ready for more football to be here. Weird, it's only Tuesday. I want it to be Thursday already, so we can dive right back into week 2 and week 3 of the college season.
Well, it'll be here before you know it.
Coaching kids sports, man, I tell you, I'm too competitive.
Oh, I'm right there with you. It's hard to contain the.
You
don't want to be disappointed. It is fun. We have fun.
I'm like, you know what's fun? Winning is fun. Winning
is fun, but I'm a sucker for. I spoil everybody in my life, unfortunately. So I'll just really make this real quick. We've never played together before, this team. They all came together this year. The coach that I took over for, unfortunately, had to move away. So they put this whole team together. We got one practice in, and we only lost 3-1. Down 3 players, no goalkeeper. So they got a pizza party yesterday, the first practice back after the game. And I'm going to get a bunch of people MVP badges. I'm excited. It's fun. And the kids had fun. It was cool to see them so excited to score their first goal in their celebrations. The ducky, I don't know what the hell that means, but whatever. One of them did the gritty. I know that because I see Justin Jefferson do it all the time. I don't know any of this other stuff.
So speaking of winning, we have our own redraft league that we drafted on Monday. I looked mine up. I got to win. Poor old Snake Eyes had Aaron Rodgers. So I guess my opening joke, that wasn't meant to be a shot at you, but now I just realized that was unfortunate. Matt looked up and saw he won, even though he played Jerry Jeudy. But Dennis, how did you do and how did the rest of the league do?
I got Tyreek. So Bennett Half, who just happens to be my wife, during the draft, 2 of her 3 quarterbacks she drafted have the same bye week. And so I told her, hey, her sister, who is the trash talker in the league, also 2 of her 3 quarterbacks have the same bye week. And I'm like, oh, you and Beth should make a trade. Well, they could not come to terms. And so out of spite, my wife sent me a trade. She would send me Lamar Jackson for Tua Tagovailoa. And I accepted. Now, I don't think they're that far apart. There's some worry on both of their health. I mean, Tua's like the top of tier 3. Jackson's like mid tier 2. So there's a little bit of difference. But I did the trade. And then Tua had a fantastic week. Lamar got me 1.56 points. So Lamar combined with my other starting quarterback, I ended up getting a -3 from my quarterback position because my other QB was Daniel Jones. Combine that with Sloopy Lou having Tyreek Hill, and I lost by about 47 points. So, I live to fight again. I lost J.K. Dobbins. I'm scrambling now for a running back. So, it is what it is. We persevere, we move on. Matt, Moore's past and present. You have Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert. OC Kellen Moore's, past quarterback and current quarterback. As you mentioned, went up against Snake Eyes. Now, he is a diehard Packers fan and was heartbroken today by the Aaron Rodgers situation. Even though Rodgers is gone, he still holds Aaron in high esteem. But his team, by and large, kind of crapped the bed. Russell got him 17 points. After that, a couple 10-pointers. Really nondescript week. You did pretty well with, Herbert, Nick Chubb, Jahmyr Gibbs, Keenan Allen. So, you got yourself off to a good week here. Matt, as I was saying, my wife was asking me last night when the Bills game was starting. She's like, what do you think my chances are? And let's see, who did she have going last night? Seems like, no, maybe she was up I think she was ahead like 11 points. And you had Diggs and Josh Allen going. And I was like, it's gonna take a lot for you to be able to pull it off. Now, I will say, Josh Allen did his part to help her win. That's for dang sure. 3 interceptions and a fumble. He certainly reverted to his Wyoming days. That's for sure. But you ended up pulling it out, 116-102. So she's off to an 0-1 start. John Weber, one of our OGs, a P1. I think he's been in every league we've ever done. He went up against my son, Smog the dog. Cole, I love him dearly. He's a fantastic kid. We mock draft, and he drafted Kadarius Toney in the 5th round. And I said, dude, do not draft Kadarius Toney in the 5th round. We real drafted, and he drafted Kadarius Toney in the 5th round. And so my thought was, well, it's either going to be a galaxy brain brilliant move because Toney goes off, is healthy, has a great year because somebody's got to be Mahomes' wide receiver 1, or it's just going to be awful. Well, it was awful. It seems like Kadarius Toney didn't want anything to do with the ball, could not hold on to it. The rest of his team has some opportunities. It's going to be a learning season for him. He's going to, there will be some evaluation. He's going to have to dig deep into himself and kind of take a look at, how he builds his team. Weber beat him by about 70 points. It was brutal. Matt Jackson, he went down to John Hamler's, 2 guys that have been in a lot of our leagues around a long time. Hamler's rode Anthony Richardson, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler to victory. It was Matt Jackson, Jalen Hurts underperformed for him. He had Breece Hall and Amon-Ra. Dallas Goedert putting up a 0. Treylon Burks didn't do him any favors. So it was a 30-point victory for John Hamler's. And then last but not least, one of our newest P1s, Just Josh, he's listed as the 2023 champion. So he's trying to manifest victory in the 2023 season. He went up against Beth. Now, Beth, I warned her. I said on Wednesday, Beth, I texted her. Now, I don't know, she's new. This is her first fantasy league. And I text her and said, hey, Travis Kelce's on the injured list. You need to pay attention and see if he's going to be out on Thursday night. So I received a text from her on Friday cussing at me because I didn't remind her again on Thursday. And I'm like, look, I think I went above and beyond telling you on Wednesday to keep an eye on it. So she took a 0 from Kelce. And by and large, her team, her philosophy was, I love the Browns. Like, she drafted so many Browns, Bruning, it makes you look like a hater. I'm just like, you're drafting too many Browns, Beth. You can't, they're not going to score enough points for it. Like, she drafted 4 Browns wide receivers. So she's since traded 1 and cut 1, but, it is what it is. She went down to a stunning defeat 122 to 77. So that is the Roundtable Redraft League recap. Say that 5 times fast.
Well, I may have won in that, but I was looking. I lost my Scott Fishbowl League by 0.35 points. So
Oh, I got crushed in the Scott Fishbowl.
Oh, you think you lost? You said by 0.35, Matt. What did I
Yeah.
lose by? They tagged me in it the other day. I lost by less than 1. 1 exactly. 202.89 to 203.89.
yeah.
Fun time.
Fun
Daniel
times.
Jones, baby. Daniel Jones.
Mine was Dak, but it's because he didn't need to play. I mean, we will get to that one. Well, let's dive into the games. We are going to go over the rest of the week 1 games. Matt and I talked a little bit about Thursday night football, which got started with the Lions winning 21-20 over the Chiefs. That really set the table for a week of what might have been considered upsets by some, not always upsets by us. It was definitely upsetting to me and my personal picks. But the first game was Battle of Division Rivals, Atlanta Falcons 24, Carolina Panthers 10. I think we had all pretty much been on Atlanta. Dennis, what did you make of the Panthers' first game on offense?
You know, they came up short, pun intended. Miles Sanders did his part, 18 for 72, caught 4 of 6 targets for 26 yards, didn't get in the end zone. So, I mean, he did what he could. But Bryce Young, 26.3% off-target throw percentage, highest of week 1. He had the 3rd highest time to throw at 3.08 seconds. These stats are from fantasypoints.com. Lowest yards per attempt at 3.84. I will say some of these might move 1 or 2 if you go look at Fantasy Points now, Fantasy Points data right now, because I did not factor in the Monday night game. I did these while I was watching the Monday night game, and the stats weren't in. But Bryce Young seemed to love Hayden Hurst. Hayden had a good game. I think he got in the end zone, if I remember correctly, even. It was not they got to go down the field more. I don't know who's going to be their field stretcher right now. I don't know if Mingo has the blazing speed. Chark was out. Seems like that was going to be his role. Terrace Marshall led him in targets. I don't know that anybody wants that. I'm sure he's out there on your waiver wire. I would suggest probably.
Pretty sure Hayden Hurst led him in targets.
Oh, did he? Okay. Maybe Marshall just led the wide receivers.
Yeah.
It was, they got to do better. They got to get the ball down the field. So it was week 1. Rookie quarterback, live and learn. I think they're going to be fine going forward. I'm not expecting them to make the playoffs. It's going to be a learning season for that offense.
Yeah, all 3 of our big rookie quarterbacks lost in their first game. We'll get to Stroud and Richardson in a bit. But Matt, on the flip side for the Falcons, rumors of Tyler Algiers' time on the bench have been greatly exaggerated. He and Bijan fairly well split their time out there. Bijan had some more receptions, got a receiving touchdown, but Algier had 5 more carries, more rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Do you like them both going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this was that big a surprise. Arthur Smith had talked about how they weren't going to just run Bijan into the ground. Tyler Algier is not a bad running back. I understand he wasn't, drafted in the top 3 rounds, which is what most people look for in running backs, but he had a 1,000-yard season last year I think he was just short. I should believe went over 1,000 yards for the Falcons. Like, he is a decent running back. I don't know that he holds on to getting more carries moving forward. Technically, he actually even touched Bijan altogether with the 15 carries and 3 catches. Bijan had 10 carries and 6. I think Bijan will eventually take over, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's not till like week 5 or 6. Like, I think they are going to slow play it a little bit because Algier is not a bad back.
All right, Greg London.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
or Kyle Pitts or anyone in the passing game. in a game that I guess some would consider I mean, not that the Browns won, but that the Bengals didn't even show up. Kind of a little bit of a mild surprise. It was 24-3, the Browns getting the win over the Bengals. Dennis, Joe Burrow signed that massive extension, now the highest paid quarterback. Didn't look it on Sunday. Should we be concerned at all about the Bengals offense?
I am not concerned about the Bengals offense. The Cleveland Browns defense sucked last year, and they have made it a point this year to fix what was broken. They brought in Jim Schwartz. They went to that wide 9, which puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Brought in Zadarius Smith. So between Smith and Myles Garrett on the edges, they were putting a lot of pressure on Burrow. I know that you want to keep your players healthy in the preseason, but playing in game situations, I think, matters some to help you develop the timing. Burrow was rusty. I know he had the cap issue, and that was why he was held out. Whether or not it was as bad as, holding him out all preseason or not, I don't know. We could speculate on that. He was not accurate, didn't break 100 yards, less than 50% passing. I guess the best thing you can say is he didn't throw any interceptions. T. Higgins, 8 targets, no catches. It was a rough day all around. They didn't do much on the ground. In part they were behind, and so they couldn't run. Mixon was getting yardage. He was 13 for 56 for a 4.3 average. Evans at 6 yards per carry. So while they were getting some chunks on the ground, they were just behind, and they couldn't really afford to run the ball. So I think they'll be fine. I'm not going to sweat it.
Yeah, they're probably the leading player for target, or the leading target receiver for the Bengals was the turf, because that seemed to be where a lot of them went. Weather impacted Deshaun Watson throws some too, but the Browns offense in general looked a little bit better, Matt. But we were all kind of curious what they were going to do with Elijah Moore. He ended up getting 7 targets, tied for the team lead, caught 3 of those. Some of them were also to the turf.
Yeah.
But they used him in some creative rushing ways too. Are you more excited or less excited after seeing game 1?
I'm still level, I guess. I watched a lot of this game, and it just seemed like, especially toward the end, is when Elijah Moore was really starting to do a lot of his work. To me, they were just doing a really good job of keeping down Amari Cooper. And at that point in time, when Elijah Moore kind of got a couple of his big passes, the Browns were already up on the Bengals. I mean, Dennis mentioned the defense and what they were able to do against the Bengals offense. I do think that was a massive – I don't even think the defense sucked last year. I think Joe Wood sucked, if I'm being honest. Just Schwartz has really transformed this defense, and I just don't think that – I want to see it another week, I guess. To me, Elijah Moore, I don't think made that much of a difference. I think if you just mentioned the dirt balls that Deshaun Watson was throwing in this game, Amari Cooper had a chance to have a massive game on Sunday, but Watson missed him multiple times. Like, I think if he wouldn't have, we'd have been talking about how great Amari Cooper, Deshaun Watson, and Nick Chubb were in that game. I just think Elijah Moore, I need to see it one more week before I believe. I mean, 14.3 average was pretty good. Like, they were using him downfield where I thought they would use DPJ. So if they do it again next week, maybe I'll be buying into the Elijah Moore hype.
So I have a question for you guys. So Jerome Ford had 15 carries. A function of garbage time, or is he going to be somebody you can look at for bye weeks?
Both. They were using him.
They were
using him a fair amount early, even after my joke about the Jerome Ford era being over after he fumbled on his first carry. They were using him, but toward the fourth, I don't know if you were watching the game live, but there were a lot of shots of Nick Chubb looking displeased that he wasn't allowed to keep running. But honestly, why would you throw Nick Chubb out there and risk an injury?
I don't think he'll be used the way Kareem Hunt was used at times last year, where like they were pulling Chubb off in between the 20s. I do think this is going to be Chubb's job for the most part, but they were using Ford early. And I'll be honest, he looked good for a lot of his runs too. There was times where he was driving that pile, and I do wonder how much of the weather, we saw it affected the wide receivers. I wonder how much that affected him as well with that fumble, but I do think he'll be used a fair amount every game. I would not be hesitant to start him in my flex some weeks.
Yeah, he didn't get any targets. Chubb was 4 for 4 on targets. And I think that's one of the things that coming out, a lot of people were real high on Ford's ability to catch the ball. And so with 15 carries, though, that's a lot.
Yeah, a lot of them straight into the line. Next up on the docket was another divisional battle. The Jacksonville Jaguars went into Indianapolis and came away with the 31-21 victory. Dennis, you were by far the highest of us on Calvin Ridley preseason. You even said your wild projection was he could end up a top 5 receiver. He certainly looked it on week 1, 11 targets, caught 8 of them for 101 yards and a touchdown. Are you impressed by what you saw from Ridley?
Well, he was wide receiver 6 on the week. So, I missed it by that much. And he's just got to hold on for 16 more weeks. He looked good. He, oops, I didn't change that screen. He was 8 receptions on 11 targets and a touchdown. That's the kind of work you want out of your wide receiver 1. That's the kind of work you want Amari Cooper to get, Jamar Chase to get, Drake London to get. But it's, the Jaguars are going to be good. I like the I like the team. It's balanced. It's got good running backs. Tank Bigsby kind of had a little bit of a rough day, but it was good to see Peterson go back to him. But I think it's clear that Calvin Ridley is the wide receiver 1. And if we're looking at what happened this week, it seems Zay Jones is the wide receiver 2. So they paid
R.I.P. Christian Kirk.
Christian Kirk a lot of money to bring him in. And, the thing with that is Kirk has to be happy winning. And it's just one of those things where he's really better in the slot. And I think they'll play plenty of 3 wide receiver. He's going to have some games where he's the one that shows out. But it's definitely Calvin Ridley's show in Duval County.
On the flip side, Anthony Richardson, one of the big rookies who lost in his first start. Matt, he rushed 10 times for about 40 yards and a touchdown. We kind of expected that. Yep. But I was more impressed, I guess, about his passing in that game. And as somebody who had maybe put Michael Pittman on a few benches
told you not
in
to.
Hindsight, feeling a little regretful. How are you feeling about Anthony Richardson?
Man, I thought he played well for a rookie, especially a guy who a lot of people have, myself included at times, described as a little bit raw coming into the NFL. I am disappointed he only got the 1 rushing touchdown. I believe I said on Friday he was going to get 2. I was really kind of hoping that happened. But again, I think Michael Pittman is the perfect kind of player for him. He's a guy who, I think the accuracy issues are a little bit overblown. Like, he'll get it to you, but it's not always, he's not going to place it like an Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's going to get it to you, though. And Michael Pittman has that massive wingspan, giant catch radius. That's why I think he's the perfect wide receiver for Anthony Richardson. He got the touchdown as well. I think this is the kind of year he's going to have all year because Richardson will force it into those guys. He did it at Florida, and I think he's going to keep doing it here for Indy.
Well, the next game has to go down as one of the most shocking of the weekend, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the Fighting Baker Mayfields coming away with a 20-17 win in Minnesota. So I'm going to pose this to both of you guys. I'll let you go first, Matt. Does this game say more about the Buccaneers or the Vikings?
If I'm being honest, neither. I think the Vikings are a much better team. They just didn't play well. I'm back on the Baker Mayfield train, baby. Let's go, Baker. I shit all over him on Friday. I thought he actually played kind of well. I think it's got to give you hope, at least a little bit, if you've got Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, because I'm almost positive I said on Friday I wouldn't be afraid to sit either one of them because I didn't think Baker was going to do anything. I mean, Godwin wasn't super impressive, just 51 yards, but Evans gets 60 and a touchdown. Like, if Baker can even play I thought he was fine. He was fine. If he can do that, like, that does probably give you a lot of hope for Evans and Godwin. To me, I thought the Vikings, at least for the most part, offensively looked like the better team. I was honestly surprised when I I have YouTube TV, so I had the quad box, and I'm not gonna lie, I stopped paying attention to that game because I thought they were gonna end up winning it. And I was just watching the Browns game, and when I looked back and saw that the Buccaneers won, I really thought there was an error with the TV. Like I actually went and had to click on that game. So I think the Vikings will be fine.
I checked the box score early on, and Baker was something like 6 for 19 or 7 for 19 or something. So he clearly came on in the second half. I love that he had Mike Evans involved, got him involved early. Rashad White didn't look great. Sean Tucker looked marginally better. But yeah, I'm not backing on Baker. He's the classic dynasty league rebuild quarterback. You could probably get him for a 3rd round pick from whoever's rostering him, and you can, because you need to have a starting quarterback, and he's gonna help you lose games and get the 101.
I think the problem was Kirk Cousins spent a lot of time with Josh Allen this week, and they were both like, Josh Allen probably threw all those turnovers last night because he saw Kirk Cousins and said, damn it, now I got to keep up. But also the Vikings defense, not demonstrably better.
Not yet, nope.
Next up, we had a game anyway. The Tennessee Titans traveled to New Orleans and lost 15-16. Ryan Tannehill threw it 34 times, did not look good throwing it, less than 200 yards, 3 interceptions. That offense did not look spectacular. Should Ryan Tannehill be watching over his shoulder?
No, I think that just speaks to how bad Malik Willis and Will Levis are, that neither one of them even got a shot to go in this game, because it was a game, despite how bad Tannehill was playing. I think Tannehill's going to be fine for the most part. I don't think he'll continue to have games like this. We've seen him have these really bad games and bounce back. What I will say is, we were definitely right on Friday telling you to fade Treylon Burks and stick with DeAndre Hopkins, 13 targets for 65 yards, or 7 receptions on 13 targets for 65 yards. Treylon Burks with his whopping 2 catches. But I think Tannehill will be fine in the long run. I really don't think we'll see Levis or Malik until like the Titans are officially knocked out of the playoffs, which I think will happen at some point.
It's week 2 too early for that. I do think, though,
I think it is.
Malik Willis played better than Will Levis in the preseason. A lot of people had dropped Malik Willis. He wouldn't be a bad speculative waiver wire ad if you have space. Because a couple more games like that from Ryan Tannehill, and
yeah, they got to do something.
Mike Vrabel might be like, yeah, no.
We'll run the triple option with Malik, Ty J. Spears, Derrick Henry.
Dennis, for the Saints, you had you thought that Rashid Shaheed might be a solid contributor. We saw Michael Thomas managed to stay healthy all of the games, saw 8 targets, caught 5 for 61, but Shaheed saw 6 targets, not too far back, caught 5 for 89 and a touchdown, had a couple of rushing carries. What do you make of those 2 complementary weapons?
Right now, they're great. It really kind of, put the damper on Juwan Johnson at the tight end position, and I think we really need more tight ends. But the way it's looking, I mean, Derek Carr led the league this week in ADOT with 12.0, was number 1 in deep pass attempts. It's like he looked at Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave and was like, you know what? I think those guys can catch it no matter how far I throw it. And so he's going out there. Olave 8 for 10 for 112. I was disappointed that Jamal Williams didn't fare better. 18 carries. He's getting the volume, but only 45 yards. But I don't think Shaheed is going to be available on your waiver wire. But if he is, man, go get him. He's probably somebody I'd be spending upwards of 35 or 40% to get him on my team. And that's in part because I don't know that I believe Michael Thomas stays healthy. I know you're not supposed to play that way. You're supposed to be injury agnostic, but Michael Thomas is 30 years old. He's slow and, he does what he does. He had a good game though, but I feel like Shaheed and Olave are the future here.
Well, in Pittsburgh, the San Francisco 49ers came to town and got a 30-7 victory. Matt, on Friday, you picked Ayuk to be the receiver to go off. I told you I thought it would be Debo. I actually played my lineups accordingly, so I'm really disappointed. But Ayuk, 8 catches on 8 targets, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, looked to have great chemistry with Brock Purdy.
Yep.
You had commented you thought they were developing something at the end of last year. Do you think he might be the receiver to own in San Francisco or to roster?
Yes and no. Next week, week 2, definitely play Debo. It's going to be a Debo week. I don't know that Ayuk keeps this up. I do think at the end of the year, he will be the highest scoring wide receiver for the 49ers. I think the big allure with Debo is that he can do everything, but I think Brandon Ayuk is the overall just better wide receiver. And I think that is why the rapport comes in there with Brock Purdy. I watched a lot of this game, and Pittsburgh just did not look good. I'm honestly surprised by how easy it was for the 49ers. I don't know that Ayuk, does this every single week, but led the team in targets, as you mentioned. I think there's a better chance that he finishes as a high-end wide receiver, too, than I thought possible earlier this year because of that connection with Brock Purdy.
So I've been saying all offseason that the San Francisco offense is CMC and 1.5 of the other 3 skill players. And what do we get? Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver 2. That's the 1. 0.5, Debo Samuel, wide receiver 34. That's a wide receiver 3 or a flex. George Kittle, zip, tight end 24. It could very well be Ayuk that's the zip next week. You're just rolling your dice with those 3 guys. Honestly, I think if I got Ayuk and I can trade him for somebody that I think is going to be almost as high a ceiling as whoever the 1 is going to be on a weekly basis in San Francisco, but more consistent, I think I'd be looking to move him.
Dennis, Matt kind of mentioned the Steelers did not look good. Add to that, Pat Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson going out of the game. Johnson's supposed to miss a few weeks. Should we be concerned about Kenny Pickett and the offense?
It's Calvin Austin, Darnell Washington time, baby. I know Calvin was a favorite of Bruning's last year, and I went out and kind of picked him up based on preseason chatter I've heard. I've got him in a few spots. Allen Robinson played reasonably well, 5 catches on 8 targets for 64 yards. I was high on Pickett. I felt like he was going to be, I don't think he was going to be a QB1, but I felt like he could be a top 16 or so, top 18 quarterback, which is great for super flex leagues. But it just seems that the offense just kind of crapped the bed this week. It looks like that in response to the AFC building these powerhouse offenses, the NFC is building powerhouse defenses. And when it gets to the Super Bowl, you're going to be having the unstoppable force versus the immovable object kind of Super Bowl, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Or San Francisco, which has both. Next up, not the most exciting game. The Arizona Cardinals traveled to play the Washington Commanders, and the Commanders won 20-16. Matt, the Arizona Cardinals, a team that many of us thought were going to be competing for the top overall draft pick. Could they be better than we think? Or are the Commanders just not good?
I think both teams are just bad. I was actually surprised this game was as close as it was. I think I mentioned on Friday, I thought the Commanders and Sam Howell had a chance to run away with this one. I mean, Dobbs played better than I thought he was going to for the Cardinals. But outside of that, I think my biggest takeaway is, I'm going to be honest, I didn't even realize Zach Ertz was going to be healthy enough to play week 1. I thought he was going to miss time. 10 targets from Josh Dobbs in week 1. And all I was able to do is get 21 yards with that, but 10 targets? I really thought Marquise Hollywood Brown was going to be the guy. I think you've got to be extremely worried about what this offense looks like. Even James Conner, close game, 14 carries, only 62 yards. I just think when they end up playing better teams than the Commanders, those stats are all going to look much worse, in my opinion, than what they got going up against the Commanders.
Yeah.
132 yards for Dobbs. I mean,
Yes.
that's better than Burrow, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
God. On the flip side, Sam Howell got the win. What did you think about his debut as the starter, Dennis?
for all the talk about his rushing ability, he only ran the ball twice, 11 yards. Did pick up a touchdown though. But he seemed reasonably efficient as a passer. Didn't take a lot of chances. 200 yards, only 61% completion rate. He's got to get that up. But he did get the one touchdown. He I was like, couldn't figure out who the Thomas was on the box scores. Logan Thomas. It's good to see him bounce back. Dotson had 7 targets. It was a disappointing game for Terry McLaurin with only 4 targets. I think that I don't think the toe injury was an issue there. I just think the Falcon or the Cardinals, kind of dictated that that's where the passing game was going to go, and it was nice that Howell didn't make a lot of mistakes. He did throw an interception. I think if I had to pick, a second-year guy that is going to kind of continue to grow throughout the season, I like Howell. I want to see him get a shot.
Next up, the last of the early morning games, the Houston Texans traveled to the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens got a 25-9 victory. Matt, CJ Stroud, another of the big rookie quarterbacks, came away with a loss in week 1. Not a lot of traction for that Texans offense. He might arguably have the worst of the set of receivers of these rookies, but what did you see from Stroud?
I mean, I thought he played well at times. I felt like that offensive line let him down a little bit. They had no running game, and we talked about it on Friday. I wouldn't have started anybody in this game, and I don't really think – I guess in a PPR league, Nico Collins probably came through. At least he got you double-digit points with the 6 catches on 80 yards. But, Stroud – 28 of 44 for 240 yards. I think he showed, to me at least, with the parts of the game that I saw, I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. I had some questions and I wasn't sure what he was going to be. I thought he looked good at times against that Baltimore defense, but man, that offensive line is bad. And just that team in general is bad. They need to get him a wide receiver.
He did complete 64%, and according to Fantasy Points data, he was 6th in highly accurate throws and 5th in catchable throw percentage. So it seems like he did what he was supposed to. Just the receivers in the running game didn't take care of their deal.
On the flip side, Dennis, I know you mentioned J.K. Dobbins being on your team, tears his Achilles, out for the year. A couple of questions. Are you kind of fading him now in Dynasty after 3 lost seasons? And the Ravens said that they are going to stay in-house. You have Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, Melvin Gordon. Do you like any of those?
I probably like Justice Hill the most out of those options. They didn't hesitate to give Hill the ball when they were down at the goal line. The downside is I don't think Hill has the build to hold up carrying a lot, which means that Lamar is probably going to end up running the ball more. They only threw the ball 22 times. I thought we were getting this wide open offense in Baltimore, but Mark Andrews is out. The people who were like plug and play Isaiah Likely, that didn't work out. It does look like Zay Flowers is the one, and there's some chemistry there. We'll see if next week. I think it's going to take a couple weeks to see, is that really the case, or did that just happen to be what it was this week? I want to see some more passing out of that offense. I want to see them get down the field. Lamar, great completion percentage, 17 to 22, but only 169 yards. They've got to get more production out of the receiving core.
And you say that as somebody that really needs him to step up for you in our redraft.
Yeah, I just traded for him, and I said he was going to get 30 touchdown passes this year. Yes, that would be correct. That is selfish. We need to pour one out for JK. Your question about JK, though, is So when we look at Achilles injuries, right now the ceiling for returning from those is Dante Foreman. And we know it's at least 2 years. So he's not going to be anything for 23 and 24. In Dynasty, you can put him on your IR this year. He may be back and on a team next year, maybe not at some point. You know, the sad thing is he was trying to get a new contract for some security. He's not going to get that now. When he does get signed, it's going to be pretty close to the veteran minimum because we just haven't seen people come back and be as effective after the injury like we've seen that from ACLs. But if I can get him for a third or a fourth round pick, late third or a fourth round pick, I'm okay to throw him at the end of my bench and wait a couple years just to see what happens. Because he does, you know, yes, I get it. He tore his Achilles. He's going to lose some explosiveness, but he still has exceptional vision. He could potentially come back and be David Montgomery.
On to the afternoon window games. The Green Bay Packers went into the Chicago Bears, and it looked like the same old Packers, even though they have a new quarterback. A 38-20 victory. Dennis, no Christian Watson, but you were pretty high on Romeo Doubs, who he only caught 4 passes, but 2 of them were for touchdowns. Jordan Love looked pretty good. Are you impressed by what you saw from the Packers?
You know, as much as I like Doubs, I don't want to hang my hat on that kind of touchdown chasing efficiency. He only had 26 yards. You know, Aaron Jones was the show, and now he's got a little hamstring. I do like what Doubs did. I like what Jaden Reed did. And Luke Musgrave was productive on 3 catches on 4 targets for 50 yards. My biggest concern is if they lose Aaron Jones for, 1, 2, 4, 5 weeks because of the hamstring, I don't think A.J. Dillon gives them the balance that they're going to need in the running game. And, if Patrick Taylor was the answer, he'd already have been getting a lot of work. So now they're going to lean towards having to throw the ball a lot more. He was only 15 of 27. Now he did have 245 yards in passing, which is good. Jordan Love looks like he belongs. And maybe, just maybe, this is going to convince some GMs when they draft quarterbacks that even if they're a first rounder, it's okay to put them in the crock pot and let them slow cook for a little bit. It helps them. It really does.
On the flip side, Matt, a lot of expectations for Justin Fields to maybe take a step forward. I was particularly excited to see him with DJ Moore.
Yeah.
That was more of a fizzle than a sizzle. Are you concerned at all about the Fields and the Bears?
I'm concerned about the Bears. I'm not necessarily concerned about Fields. Just, I believe, 65% completion percentage. You'd like to see that a little bit better. But again, he comes through for you in fantasy because he gets you the 59 rushing yards. I mean, he gets a touchdown through the air. But overall, yes, I'm worried about the Bears. I mean, Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet led the team with 7 targets, along with Roschon Johnson, which I was not expecting. DJ Moore to only get 2. Granted, he caught both of them. That's definitely worrisome to me. If you were hoping to know who's going to be the lead guy in this running game, I don't think you got that answer either. Khalil Herbert got 9 carries, but then Roschon and Donta both got 5. And even on top of that, Khalil Herbert got 5 targets compared to Roschon's 7. I guess I would look at that as Donta is the third behind Roschon and Khalil Herbert. But I honestly feel like if you're looking at this team right now, you're just playing Justin Fields, and that's it. I don't think you can trust anybody else on the Bears offense at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're putting those running backs out there and hoping one of them takes control of the job right now.
Yeah.
On to Denver, where the Broncos began with an onside kick that failed, and it was emblematic of the rest of their kicking game exploits. Will Lutz, really glad we traded for him so he could shank an extra point and miss a field goal. In a game, the Broncos lost 17-16 to Josh McDaniels and the Raiders. Dennis, for the Raiders, Jacoby Myers, team high 10 targets, caught 9 of them, got 2 touchdowns. Do you think he should be an every week starting consideration along with Adams?
I think he's a flex at best. I like the story. It was nice that Garoppolo was able to, be efficient and spread the ball around. But I think what's going to happen is Michael Mayer is going to start to step up at tight end. Josh Jacobs will get some play at the running back. I don't think Hunter Renfro, who did he even play? Because doesn't look like he had any targets.
Yeah, I think he played, but
at some point he's gonna step into a role. I like what they did with Myers. There was a lot of talk that he's only a slot guy, and they're not going to be able. He's not going to be able to transition. He played outside and he looked capable of doing it. He doesn't have great speed, but he's got good size. He took to heart whatever everybody's saying he couldn't do it. He put that chip up on his shoulder and he went out there in week 1 and showed us. I think he's definitely somebody that you should be flexing. Give him that opportunity. You're going to end up at some point. We'll see a pattern this season with whether or not he is an every week starter at the flex. I don't think he's going to work his way up into a wide receiver two role. I don't have faith that Garoppolo is going to provide enough volume for that. But it's Davante Adams' team.
Matt, on the flip side, the Broncos backfield, we saw quite a bit of work for both Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine. Perine doing a lot better in the passing game. Williams with a slight edge running. What do you make of the backfield going forward?
I mean, I would not be surprised if you're able to start both of these guys most weeks. I mean, Javonte 13 carries to Samaje Perine's 8. Now, Samaje Perine, as you mentioned, did do better in the receiving game, catching all 4 of his targets, but Javonte Williams out-targeted him with 6. He actually led the team in targets with 6. I think they wanted to use him that when he was a pretty good receiving back as well in college. That's where he kind of separated himself a little bit from Michael Carter. We've seen when Sean Payton has multiple backs that he's not afraid to use both of them. Both those guys can be fantasy relevant. And, I'll be honest, I didn't get to watch a ton of this game, so I don't know how good or bad Russell Wilson really looked, but the stats tell me he did not look great. I wouldn't be surprised if they lean heavily on Perine and Javonte, and they end up being probably 2 of the better fantasy assets on this team moving forward.
Actually, Russ was pretty good. He had a long bomb down the sideline where if Philip Dorsett understood what a sideline was, would have been a touchdown. I'm sorry. I'm still literally, I had to start a live show at 5:00 Sunday. The Raiders scored 10 seconds before I had to start to go up 17-16. And then I saw that penalty on Jacoby Myers to end the game. We were talking about movies afterward. The guy's like, the light went out of your eyes there in the middle. And I'm like, yeah, it did. In New England, the Philadelphia Eagles traveled to play the New England Patriots this week. Eagles got the 25-20 victory. A lot of it, some good defense and special teams early. Didn't have to rely on the offense too much. But Dennis, when they did, it seemed like Kenneth Gainwell was the back that they preferred, which is the case in the preseason, but we thought that was just the preseason. Is it just the preseason hype?
So they listed all 4 backs as their starters on the depth chart. Will anybody be surprised if next week Gainwell is a healthy scratch and Boston Scott gets 15 carries? I think being reasonable tells us that Gainwell with 14 carries is the guy. He's the Miles Sanders. He's the one who's going to get the bulk of the carries. However, we have seen them do some crazy stuff. DeAndre Swift is the most talented. And I think Rashad Penny is the most powerful. Rashad Penny, I think, is also the most explosive. And I don't know what to make of this backfield. I'm glad I don't have to rely on it. Right now, I think this backfield is perfect for teams that are tanking because you just don't know. You could play Gainwell next week based on his 14 for 54 and 4 targets, and he might get you, 3 for 9 and no targets. And DeAndre Swift goes, 15 carries for 75 yards and 7 targets. I just don't know what to make of it. At least with Arthur Smith, he tells us, hey, fuck you guys, I'm not throwing the ball. Here, they're like, oh, no, they're all starters. I don't know, man. I think Gainwell, based on week 1, Gainwell is the one you want as a low-end flex. You don't want any of the others yet. Let's see how week 2 goes.
I just want to know what DeAndre Swift did to Nick Sirianni's wife during this lack of touches.
Let's go check it out.
On the flip side, Patriots offense took a little while to get on track. The rushing game wasn't particularly great, with more of a split of carries than you would like if you roster Ramondre Stevenson. But the breakout seemed to be Kendrick Bourne, 11 targets, 6 receptions, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. Matt, somebody has to be the man in this passing game. You believe in Kendrick?
No. I think it's going to be a different person every week, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, it definitely helps that he got 11. He out-targeted everybody, but DeMario Douglas, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Zeke all got 7. Hunter Henry, Ramondre Stevenson, 6 each. Philly's a really good defense. I imagine that's why Mac Jones had to spread it around the way he did. If you want to start Bourne next week as like a flex spot, fine. I mean, if he gets you a touchdown again or something, I think he'll be fine. I don't think that he's getting you 64 yards and 2 touchdowns every week. I would imagine he's still going to end up finishing as probably like a wide receiver 4 or 5. I just don't believe in this offense, and I don't think he's the guy that leads this team.
Would be an interesting waiver pickup, though, because I don't think he's heavily rostered. Probably the game of the day part was the Miami Dolphins at the Los Angeles Chargers. A lot of back and forth. The Dolphins get the 36-34 win. Dennis, I know you've got to be a little bit bitter that you just dealt Tua for Lamar in fantasy, but if you were on the fence about whether you thought Tua could bounce back from injuries and be effective, did this game do anything for you?
If you believe Tua is injury prone, it doesn't matter if he stays healthy for the next 5 years. You're still going to have that thought. At some point, you just suck it up and you draft him or play him, and maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy and he gets hurt or whatnot. Tua is a really good quarterback. I had him over Burrow when they were coming out. Now, do I think he's better than Burrow now after watching him in the NFL? No. But Tua is a really, really good quarterback. He's very accurate. He's got a good enough arm, and he's got weapons and a coach that believes in him, that a coach that puts him in position to make plays and be successful. I mean, 466 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm still a little shook after trading him to my wife for Lamar Jackson, but this team it's a funnel team. It's Tua, or it's Tyreek, it's Jalen Waddle. I don't know that I expect Durham Smythe to get 7 targets every week. Now, I will say that could be a thing, in part because it wasn't, we want to say, oh, well, they just don't use the tight end because they didn't use Gesicki. But McDaniels comes from an offense that George Kittle is the tight end, and the tight end has to be able to do things that Gesicki either was unwilling or just couldn't do or was terrible at. And so I get it. They moved on from him. That here's your check. Now go find you someplace that will play you how you want to play. We need tight ends that are two-way players. And sometimes when you do that, you sacrifice some athleticism. But Durham Smythe looked pretty good. So am I going to start him anytime soon? No. It's Tyreek, and it's Jalen Waddle, and probably Raheem Mostert.
Yeah, running game continues to be an enigma. On the other side, the Chargers made a change, bringing in Kellen Moore, seemingly wanting to get more out of their offense. They scored 34 points on offense. Herbert looked pretty good. They ran for over 200 yards, but they still come up short. Matt, is this just the case of the same old Chargers and maybe needing to make a change elsewhere in the coaching staff?
Yes, fire Brandon Staley. We talked about this last year. I mean, he's a defensive-minded head coach, and I don't think the offense was the problem last year either. Like, I did like the hire of Moore. I think he's going to work well for this offense. You know, we saw Keenan Allen emerge a little bit. I thought he looked amazing. Everybody else just kind of looked okay. Donald Parham, Dennis's guy, got a touchdown in that one. Mike Williams looked okay. Got to see a little bit of Quentin Johnson. Obviously, you got to be worried about Eckler now with the injury that he might be dealing with. I thought even Josh Kelly looked good at times when Eckler wasn't out there. They split the carries right down the middle, 16 each. That defense, man, like when you have a team this good and a quarterback that good, like I think you're just throwing away possibly his golden years with a defense that's just not, again, defensive-minded head coach. And the defense cost them a playoff game last year and already cost them a game this year against the Dolphins.
So my question, how do we, so I think we all believe that unless some miracle happens, Staley's gone. And if Staley is gone, do we think that Kellen Moore is going to be a good enough head coach to take the next step with this team?
No.
I do. Because if you bring in, I'll equate it to the Browns. If you can bring in a defensive coordinator, they have the talent on the defense. They have a good they have good defensive players, just like the Browns did last year. Then you bring in a guy like Jim Schwartz, and granted, it's only one game, so very small sample size. But look at the massive difference we saw in that Browns defense this year. I just think they need someone who was just going to come in and run that defense. I think Brandon Staley is trying to be too. He comes from it's the Sean McVay tree, right? Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan tree.
No, Wade Phillips.
He's waiting. Well, that's even worse. That's really stupid. No, you need.
He was part of it. Yeah, he was in. He's the defensive side, not the offense.
Much like McCarthy, Staley outcoaches himself.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Just bring in a defensive coordinator. Unfortunately, this league
Mike McCarthy laid the wood to somebody on Sunday. So.
That's only one game. We know his. Yeah, I was like, we know Mike McCarthy's track record. Unfortunately, I think Kellen Moore will be a fine head coach because he will run that offense, and I think he'll be fine doing it. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is the defense. That's what they need to fix.
So Joshua Kelly is my number one waiver wire pickup over Puka Nacua. I know Puka's rostered in our league. My issue with Puka is that I think Cooper Kupp comes back and Puka goes to the bench. Austin Eckler has been pounding the table for 3 or 4 years now. You guys need to get somebody in here to carry the load with me. And I think now Joshua Kelly in his 3rd season is showing us he's ready for it. He's good enough. I think we see a lot more. Do I think it's going to continue to be an exactly even split? No, I don't. I think it's going to tilt towards Eckler, but I think Kelly is going to be somebody you can start in your flex on a weekly basis.
All right. No, we have 3 games left from the slate. This one was also a surprise late Sunday afternoon. Los Angeles Rams went up to Seattle and got the 30-13 victory. Dennis, you mentioned Puka Nacua. He looked pretty good. You know who else looked good was Kyren Williams, who had 15 carries, 52 yards, 2 touchdowns. Do you think there's some smoke to the fire in the backfield there?
I think there is. You know, Akers has to be more efficient. You can't go 22 carries for 29 yards and expect to hold the job. We heard a lot in the offseason that Kyren Williams has looked really good in the passing game. He's looked good in the passing game. Well, season started and he looked good in the running game as well. I think that Akers is going to be safe for a couple more weeks. To me, I think unless he can provide some explosiveness, Akers is pretty fast. He's got good size. He's pretty fast. He just has awful vision. He may have some of the worst vision in the league. Kyren Williams ran a slow 40 time. He has to make up for it somewhere, and it looks like he's making up for it with vision. He's not an overly big guy. He's smaller than Akers. I think he's only about 200 pounds, 205 pounds. So he's kind of like an Austin Eckler light, not a terrific 40 time. think he ran like a 4.56 or a 4.6 40 coming out. But yeah, I like Kyron Williams. I think you can play him until something happens and we see him hit the bench.
Matt, for the Seahawks last year, they started strong, but they kind of hit a little bit of a funk to end the season. They looked to be in a funk here. Were you and I just a little too early in projecting them to not have a great season in 2022?
Nope. Geno Smith looks like he's turned back into a pumpkin. That's all I've got to say. That was a bad game. And I get that maybe we overestimated how bad the Rams are, or maybe not. That was not pretty. And I would not be surprised if we unfortunately see a lot more of this 112 passing yards from Geno Smith like we got Sunday. It was not pretty. Best thing to come out of that game was him yelling, "Oh crap," when Aaron Donald was running right at him. That's probably about the best part.
Not a great sign for those of us rostering those receivers. Another game that was underwhelming that we won't dwell too much on is the Sunday Night Football. I mean, I guess technically it was a game, but it was over from about the end of the first drive on when the Cowboys blocked a field goal, returned it for a touchdown, went on to win 40-0. Won't dwell too long. Dennis, I'll start with you. Did you learn anything about the Cowboys or the Giants from this game?
Well, Pollard had a good game, 14 carries, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. CD Lamb, it would have been nice if Dak threw a touchdown pass or two, but I mean, they were blowing them out. I'm surprised. To be honest, I'm surprised Cooper Rush even threw a pass, being in there. This is one of those games where you look at it and you see the score and you're like, oh, it's going to be great for fantasy. And then you go and you look at the box score and it's, defensive special team scores. And
it was if you played the Dallas Cowboy defense special teams.
It was, unfortunately for us, we don't play a lot.
Or Tony Pollard
special teams. Rico Dowdell looked good as a backup. I don't think he's going to be have a standalone role. Maybe late in the season, if Pollard starts to wear down, he will. Deuce Vaughn, he didn't. He had 6 carries, but let's face it, it was mop up. You're not going to see Deuce Vaughn getting 6 carries on a regular basis. Would have been nice to see Jake Ferguson. A lot of people were high on him, myself included. He did lead the team in targets, but he only converted 2 for 11 yards. Needs to be more efficient there.
Any additional thoughts about that turkey?
No, I mean, I just think it was a bad game for the Giants. It's one of those things once everything starts going against you, it just continues to unravel. I thought Barkley actually looked pretty good against a fairly good Dallas defense. It was good to see him out there, not just running, but hitting some balls. The weird thing about this, maybe it's just because Daniel Jones didn't play well, but I don't think we got any answers for you would hope in a game where you're losing 40-0, you get some kind of answer on who the guy is to target in this receiving core, and I don't think we got that answer at all, unfortunately. It was still fairly spread around.
The guy to target is none of them.
Yeah, so that my big takeaway is you're starting, as I think Daniel Jones will end up being fine. I think the only players you're starting every week right after the Giants are Jones and Barkley.
The Monday night game was a pretty exciting matchup on paper. The Bills going in to battle the Jets. It was the second of back-to-back home games at the Meadowlands, kind of in honor of 9/11. Went to overtime. The Jets get the 22-16 win, but we will get to their bigger loss in a moment. But Matt, Josh Allen, 3 interceptions, fumbled twice, lost one of them. Is he just too reckless with the ball?
Yeah, but you deal with it because he's also one of the best players in the NFL. He doesn't do this often, but every once in a while he has these games where he has a bunch of interceptions or maybe it's a bunch of fumbles. Yet he's going to come out next week. I don't even know who the Bills play. The Raiders. He's going to come out next week against the Raiders and probably throw 4 touchdown passes and have a rushing touchdown. It's just one of those things where you deal with it. Like, yes, it was a bad game for Josh Allen, and at the end of the day, though, he's going to be probably QB2 again. Like, you just deal with it because the talent's there.
Dennis, on the flip side, the Aaron Rodgers era for the Jets lasted 4 snaps. before he unfortunately tore his Achilles. Zach Wilson had to come in. Didn't play bad. Brees Hall looked pretty good. That defense and special teams stepped up. What do you expect from the Jets, a team that kind of entered with a lot of high expectations?
So the Jets have a really good defense. And not just because they intercepted Josh Allen 3 times. They had a good defense last year. And I think that's what's going to have to carry them. They're saying all the right things today. Zach Wilson is our guy. We believe in Zach Wilson. I don't know who their third quarterback is. I should have probably looked it
Tim
up.
Boyle.
Tim Boyle. Aaron Rodgers' caddy. I feel like they're going to go out and get somebody. I know that, they're not getting Brady and they're not getting Matt Ryan and they're not getting Phillip Rivers. Not because they don't want them. I just don't think those guys really want to come back. Brady, I think, has started to enjoy retirement. Phillip, he's out a couple years. I don't think, I think he realizes he's done. Ryan, would be the one of them I would think might still think he would give it a shot and try to make up for how bad he was last year. To me, I think they're going to need to look around the league for a veteran. I don't know if that's Andy Dalton in Carolina. If I'm looking for somebody that's going to be able to start games and win games for us, I would go try to get Jameis Winston. And now I don't want Jameis mentoring Zach Wilson because, that's all we need is another 30-30 season from a Jet quarterback. Jameis, I think, is a good enough player to start in this league. Carson Wentz is still out there. Do you go do that? I don't know. That's who else is out there. I don't think they could get Mike White back from Miami. It's a division. Do they go get Drew Lock from Seattle? I don't know. I feel like Geno, starting off the way he did this year, I think Pete might be a little reluctant to move on from Drew Lock. There's not a lot of players out there that you're going to get and feel great. Teddy Bridgewater, but Detroit feels like they're a playoff team. I don't think they're going to trade Bridgewater. So it's tough sledding out there. I think they need to get somebody. If I had to put money down on they're going to sign somebody or they're going to acquire somebody, I think it's going to be Carson Wentz.
That does seem more likely. I honestly think they're going to roll with Wilson for a little while. But definitely the air went out of the stadium for the Jets fans. Well, that is a wrap on the Week 1 slate. We will be back on Friday with a full preview of all the Sunday and Monday games of Week 2. But before we get out of here, there is a game before we get to Friday, and that is the Thursday night game. So I'm going to pop this one to you guys. The Minnesota Vikings, coming off that untimely 20-17 home loss, travel to battle the Philadelphia Eagles. Probably not a get-right game for them. Who are you guys picking and why? I will start with you, Dennis.
I'm going with the Eagles. I think their defense is good, really good. I think they're going to be able to, kind of get their head right. They've got a week of practice under their belt now and game situation. And honestly, I think they'll bounce back from how they played. They've got a good offense. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown are outstanding wide receivers. And frankly, Minnesota's defense just isn't that good. And while I think they're going to be better than they were last year, losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 1 doesn't kind of put you on the track for that.
Yeah, everything points to the Eagles, so I'm taking the Vikings. Primetime Cousins on Amazon Primetime. It's going to make it happen. I don't know why I don't feel great about it, but everything says the Eagles should win this fairly easily. It never works that way. I'm going to take the Vikings.
I don't know if they'll win easily, but I am taking the Eagles. I think they are a better overall team. And if Minnesota starts 0-2, the Lions on the flip side, they beat the Chiefs and they get to go home and get the weary Seattle Seahawks. So could be opening up a little bit of a lead there. Well, Dennis, we have two sad footballless nights. We've helped fill a little bit of their Tuesday night, but what can the people do if they're still missing the game?
Well, they can go and subscribe, go to their favorite podcast platform, go find us on YouTube. We're out there. You can see our faces while we talk instead of just listen to our sultry voices. Subscribe, download, give us a rating and a review.
Well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back on Friday looking at the rest of week 2. You guys put in those waiver claims. Zach Wilson's not going to roster himself for you.